Did you know that storytelling is one of the oldest forms of human communication? It's true. Research shows that our brains are wired for stories. In fact, studies reveal that when people hear a story, their brains sync up with the storytellers. This means your audience can literally feel what you feel. But here's the kicker: a staggering 65% of people can't remember the details of a presentation just 24 hours later. That's a huge opportunity for storytellers to stand out. So, why do some stories stick while others fade away? What separates a good story from a truly captivating one? The truth is, there are hidden techniques that can transform your storytelling. In this video, we'll explore 6 powerful strategies that most people overlook. From the magic of silence to the art of vulnerability, these secrets will help you connect deeply with your audience. You'll learn how to surprise them, engage their senses, and make them feel every word you say. Are you ready to unlock the secrets of storytelling that nobody talks about? Let's dive in and discover how to captivate your audience like never before. Chapter 1: The Unseen Power of Silence. Let's talk about something no one mentions in storytelling: silence. Most people think storytelling is all about words, but the pauses between them. That's where the magic happens. When used right, silence builds tension and gives your audience time to process emotions. In fact, research shows that the brain processes speech faster when there's silence between sentences. A 2016 study in the Journal of Cognitive Neuroscience found that well-placed pauses make listeners feel more connected to the speaker. It gives them a moment to reflect and build anticipation. Think about Alfred Hitchcock's movies. He was a master of using silence to create suspense. His rule was simple: there is no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of it. When you pause during your storytelling, you're not just giving your audience a break, you're pulling them deeper into the story. For instance, if you're telling a suspenseful part of your story, stop. Take a breath. Let your audience fill the silence with their imagination. That's how you make them feel the tension. Pausing also adds weight to what you say next. In the age of fast-paced content, silence makes your story stand out. It says, "Pay attention. Something important is coming." Incorporating silence into your storytelling doesn't mean you should use awkward or random pauses. It's about timing. Start with short, subtle pauses and see how it shifts the mood. Over time, you'll develop a natural rhythm that works for you. As you practice, you'll notice your audience leaning in, waiting for what's next. That's how you keep them captivated. Chapter 2: Story Mapping. Beyond the hero's journey. We all know about the hero's journey. It's used in countless stories from Star Wars to Harry Potter. But what if I told you there are other story structures that can hook your audience even better? In fact, research by Stanford University found that stories with unexpected structures tend to engage listeners more deeply, simply because they break the monotony. Take, for instance, a cyclical narrative, where the story loops back to its beginning. It's a technique used in Christopher Nolan's film Memento. This structure messes with time and makes the audience work a little harder, and guess what? It works. People love solving puzzles, and a cyclical narrative taps into that. The Journal of Media Psychology reports that people are more likely to remember stories that don't follow traditional patterns. Then there's the fragmented narrative, where the story jumps between different time periods or perspectives. This approach can give your story a layer of mystery and complexity. Think of Pulp Fiction. The plot isn't linear, but it's unforgettable because it's unpredictable. Fragmented storytelling keeps your audience guessing, and in today's world of content overload, unpredictability is a goldmine. The key here is to experiment. Not every story needs a beginning, middle, and end in that order. Don't be afraid to break the rules. When you try different structures, you're not just telling a story, you're creating an experience. And experiences are what stick with people long after your story is done. Chapter 3: The Secret Language of Emotion. Did you know that only 7% of communication is verbal? According to a famous study by Albert Mehrabian, 93% of communication is non-verbal, made up of tone and body language. That's huge. Yet most storytellers focus almost entirely on the words they're saying, completely ignoring how they say them. The truth is, people feel more connected when they can sense your emotions rather than just hear them. Let's say you're telling a heartfelt story about overcoming a challenge. The words themselves might be powerful, but if your voice is flat or your body language is closed off, the emotional impact will fall flat too. To fully capture your audience, you need to speak the language of emotion, not just with your words, but with your tone, facial expressions, and even gestures. There's a great example of this in Maya Angelou's speeches. She said, "People will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel." Her voice wasn't just a tool for words, it was an instrument for emotion. She used pauses, shifts in pitch, and subtle facial expressions to bring her stories to life. Studies have shown that emotional storytelling is more memorable. A study from Harvard Business Review revealed that stories that evoke emotions lead to a 22x increase in recall. Think about that. If you want your audience to remember your story, you have to make them feel something. So, how do you do it? Start by focusing on how you feel while telling the story. If it's a sad moment, don't be afraid to let your voice soften. If it's an exciting part, let your eyes light up. And remember, less is more. Sometimes, a quiet, emotional tone can be more impactful than shouting excitement. If you're enjoying these storytelling secrets, don't forget to subscribe for more tips on how to engage and inspire your audience. Chapter 4, The Element of Surprise. Now, let's talk about a key ingredient that makes any story unforgettable: surprise. And no, I'm not talking about giant plot twists like you see in thrillers. The surprises that really hook an audience are the small, unexpected moments that break patterns. Think of these as micro-surprises, a quirky character detail, an unexpected joke, or a sudden shift in tone. Here's the thing: human brains love surprises. According to neuroscientists, surprise activates the brain's dopamine system. It's why we love watching movies with unpredictable endings or listening to comedians who keep us guessing. A 2011 study published in Nature found that when people experience something unexpected, they get a surge of pleasure, and they're more likely to remember that moment. One great example is in Pixar films. They often have these little moments where a character does something completely out of the blue, yet it fits perfectly. Think of the dog, Doug, in Up, randomly shouting, "Squirrel," in the middle of a conversation. It's a tiny surprise that makes people laugh, and they remember it long after the movie is over. So how do you add micro-surprises to your storytelling? Start small. Maybe throw in a funny anecdote where people least expect it. Or, shift your tone, go from serious to light-hearted within a sentence. Just make sure the surprises feel natural. If your story is all dark and brooding, an out-of-place joke will feel forced. But a well-timed, subtle shift, that can leave your audience wanting more. It's these small, clever breaks in expectation that keep people hooked. Chapter 5, Sensory Storytelling. Let me ask you this: when was the last time you told a story that made someone taste the food you were describing or smell the rain in your memory? Most storytellers forget that we experience the world through 5 senses, not just sight and sound. Yet, the more senses you engage, the more vivid and immersive your story becomes. According to cognitive science research published in Cognition and Emotion, people are far more likely to remember stories that involve sensory details. When you describe a smell or taste, it activates the same parts of the brain that light up when people actually experience those sensations. That's why a well-told story can make someone's mouth water just from hearing you describe a meal. Look at how best-selling author Haruki Murakami writes. He doesn't just say, "The room was hot." He adds layers of sensory detail: "The humid air clung to my skin, the faint scent of mildew hanging in the corners." Instantly, you're transported into that sticky room. You can feel it. Want to try sensory storytelling? Next time you're describing a scene, think beyond sight and sound. Add a whiff of the coffee brewing in the background. Describe the rough texture of a brick wall under your character's hand. Don't overload the details. Just a couple of well-chosen sensory cues can make your audience feel like they're right there with you. And once they're fully immersed, they won't want to leave your story. If you found these storytelling strategies helpful, make sure to subscribe for more insights on how to engage and inspire your audience.